If you are thinking about buying a home in the Boston area and your budget is somewhere between $1 and $3 million, you're probably asking yourself some version of this question. What can I get and where should I be looking? Because on paper, that sounds like a huge range, and it is. But in the Boston area, the differences between $1, $2, and $3 million homes aren't always what people anticipate they are going to be. And more importantly, it's not just about what you get. It's about how differently that budget actually behaves depending on where you are. So in this video, I'm going to break down how that range actually works across the Boston market and how to think about your budget so you're not making the wrong decision early on. Section 1, how to think about this range. So how should you think about this range? Well, before we even dive into neighborhoods or specific homes, one mistake I see buyers making is asking themselves, what can I afford, instead of what type of life do I actually want to live? Because between $1 and $3 million in the Boston area, you are not just upgrading the property. You are upgrading things like the commute, the walkability, the proximity to the city, your neighborhood quality, and even the school districts. In other words, you're not just buying square footage. You're buying location, convenience, and lifestyle. And in Boston, those are often the things that drive price more than anything else. And just to frame this, most of the buyers I work with at this price range are either relocating or they're going to be making a move in the next 6 to 12 months. And they're trying to just understand what to focus on before they get too far into the process. And in this video, I'm going to be mentioning some towns to the north, to the south, and to the west of the city, because I often have buyers that are sort of comparing across all three depending on their commute, their family being nearby, their lifestyle, and their overall priorities. So I'm going to be talking about towns from all across the greater Boston area in this video. And with that said, instead of looking at this like one big range of 1 to 3 million, let's break this down into 3 tiers. First, let's discuss the $1 to $1.3 million price point. And this is what I would essentially call the entry point into Boston's higher end housing market. At this price point, you're going to be essentially looking at 2 different paths depending on how you want to live. On the city side, you have condos in neighborhoods like South Boston, East Boston, and Dorchester, and in some cases, even a foothold into some more prime neighborhoods like the Back Bay, Beacon Hill. On the suburban side, we are talking single family homes in towns like Quincy, Braintree, Canton, where you can actually get a very solid property at this price point. Then you have areas just north or west of the city like Malden, Medford, and parts of Waltham. In places like Milton or Arlington, you can still get in at this price range, but you're going to have to be a little bit more selective when it comes to size, condition, and exact location within those neighborhoods. And that's where a lot of this nuance comes in here, because even within this price range, a $1.2 million single family in Braintree looks very different than a $1.2 million condo in South Boston, and very different again from what $1.2 million will get you in a town like Milton or Arlington or one of these closer in suburbs. So while this is technically one price tier, you are definitely looking at different lifestyle options within it. The homes themselves are usually solid, livable, sometimes updated, but not always in the most prime locations. So at this level, buyers are often choosing between space, location, or condition. You can usually get 2 out of 3, but rarely all 3. So what does this tier really mean? Well, at 1 to 1.3 million, you are going to be getting a solid condo option in the city, or a strong single family home option in a more accessible suburb, or a foothold into more competitive towns. But you may not be maximizing things like prime locations, fully updated homes, or top tier neighborhoods. And this is usually where I spend a lot more time with buyers up front, helping them navigate the suburban lifestyle versus the city condo lifestyle, or some kind of a balance between the two, because everything else tends to evolve around that first decision on what type of lifestyle they're looking for. Now let's get into the $1.3 million to $2 million price point. Now this is where things really start to open up. And for many buyers, this is what I would call the Boston move up sweet spot. At this level, both paths start to get a lot stronger. On the city side, we are talking about larger, more updated condos. Neighborhoods like the South End, the Back Bay, Beacon Hill, or Charlestown. We are talking about amenities, better layouts, and more space. On the suburban side, now we're talking about single family homes in towns like Milton, Arlington, and Winchester, west of the city in places like Needham, Belmont, Lexington, or parts of Newton. Stronger options on the South Shore like in Hingham, more consistency in North Shore towns like Melrose or Wakefield. The big difference here is consistency. At this level, homes are usually larger, more updated, in stronger neighborhoods, and often in more desirable school districts. This is also where buyers start to feel like they really have some choices. Instead of trying to make a house work, you're actually finding opportunities that fit your lifestyle. So what really changes at this price point? You have strong condo options in prime city neighborhoods, more consistent single-family home options across the suburbs, more updated homes, more desirable towns across multiple parts of the metro area. So for many buyers, this is the point where the search is less frustrating and more exciting. At this stage, a lot of the work becomes less about finding listings and more about narrowing the search to specific towns, neighborhoods, and even specific pockets, because that's where the real differences start showing up. Now let's get into the $2 to $3 million price range. And here is where the conversation really starts to change. At this level, you're no longer asking, what can I get? You're asking, where do I want to live? Because 2 to 3 million opens up very strong options in the Boston area on both the city side and the suburban side. On the city side, we're getting into large, high-end condos in the Seaport, Back Bay, the South End, or Beacon Hill. And this is where you start to see some real differences in the product type. You might be choosing between a classic brownstone with more character or a newer full-service building with amenities like concierge, garage parking, and elevators. And for a lot of buyers, that becomes a key decision point. Do you want character and location, or do you want convenience, amenities, and ease of living? Now on the suburban side, we are talking about prime homes in towns like Wellesley, Needham, or Newton, top tier west side communities like Lexington, strong north of the city markets like Winchester, and coastal and lifestyle driven towns like Hingham, Cohasset, or Duxbury. This is where buyers start getting premium locations, larger spaces or lots, better streets and neighborhoods, and much more lifestyle flexibility. And for a lot of people relocating to Boston, this is where you can really start designing the lifestyle that you want. So here is what this tier unlocks. Premium condo living in the city with meaningful choices around building type, amenities, and lifestyle. High-end single-family homes across the suburbs. Coastal, suburban, or urban lifestyle options. Long-term stability, and prestige markets. At this point, you're not making nearly as many compromises. You're more just choosing between different lifestyles. And at this level, most of the conversations I'm having with clients are about aligning the home with how they want to live day to day, because usually there are multiple options here. So what's actually changing as you move up here? And this is something that a lot of buyers don't fully realize, especially with a lot of these subtle nuance in a lot of these greater Boston area towns. As you move up from 1 to 3 million, you are not just talking about upgrading the finishes and the square footage. You are upgrading time with shorter commutes and easier access. Flexibility with more options and fewer compromises. Consistency with stronger neighborhoods. Lifestyle, whether that's walkability in the city, space in the suburbs, or access to water. And in many cases, the difference between a home that feels good enough and one that feels exactly right is just a few $100,000. Most buyers don't realize this, but a big part of getting this right isn't just about the home. It's about having a clear framework for how you evaluate different areas and price points before you even start touring. So if you are buying a home in the greater Boston area at this price point, the goal is not to max out your budget completely, and it's also not to stay overly conservative just to feel safe. The goal is to understand what each level actually gives you, because once you see the differences clearly, the right decision becomes a lot easier. If you are planning on buying a home in the Boston area in the next 6 to 12 months, whether it's in the city or in the suburbs, and you're looking for a little bit more clarity on towns, neighborhoods, price points, timelines, and a strategy to make sure that you're not going to be spinning your wheels looking in the wrong places, feel free to reach out to us. We are happy to have a conversation with you, understand what your goals are for your lifestyle here. We absolutely love helping people out that are following our channel. But in the meantime, thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this gave you a better understanding of what you're going to get in the Boston area for $1 to $3 million. See you in the next one. Take care.